Hi. So today we're talking about how to build a community. Big deal. Sarah-Diane. So Sarah-Diane, you're the founder and CEO of Sandblock. Sandblock is a startup that helps with customer engagement through gamification. Sandblock is also one of the first French startups that had been founded after a successful ICO. So, congratulations on that. And you've been involved in the space for several years, and you're a blockchain advisor focused on privacy and tokenomics. Dylan, you're also founder and CEO of Refereum. Refereum is the largest blockchain-based referral network for gaming and blockchain industries. Before that, you worked as a game designer and game economic designer for multiple studios. You also help developers at Unity, and at the same time, you created an inclusive game developer co-working space in San Francisco, right? Yeah. Kate, you're a business development and digital strategist consultant. You're a chief operating officer of CityWeb Consultants, a full-stack consultancy company specialized in emerging tech, especially blockchain. You have held senior technical and financial position in multiple industries, but you have been focused in software and tech for the last decade. Right. And last but not least, you're a published sci-fi author. Yeah, right. And I recommend Kate's Bitcoin Hurricane novel. I had a great time reading it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Kate, what about your project?
I'm in a slightly unusual position because we're not building games. So I've come into the blockchain space from an enterprise point of view. My background's actually accountancy. So I learned my way through business strategies and business models in a fair amount of detail. But I was always the accountant who could do tech. So I was the one who did the payroll and ran the Unix box. And eventually I just dropped the accountancy after 25 years behind a calculator. So we find ourselves working with people who either come and say, I have a business problem I need to solve. How do I solve it? In which case you look and apply the technology that is going to solve the problem. And we also have people coming and going, I'd like some magic internet money to fund this project. How can I fit a token into my idea? So we spend a lot of time telling people that they don't need a blockchain. But it's those few occasions when there is something really new that you can do with the technology that it becomes really exciting.
Thank you. Dylan, what about Refereum?
Yeah, so I think in context for this panel, some background on Refereum is we did our token sale earlier in the year, and we actually went pretty viral in terms of building community. We kind of hit the max of Telegram, a very popular metric in the token sale space of how large is your community in Telegram, and we actually had to tweet the CEO of Telegram and say, hey, can you increase the max limit? And they did, and then we hit 75 and 100, and we basically got through that through all the classic functions of good marketing, good communication, and also classic growth hacking, if you will, and other types of models like that can really just build and expand your type of community. And yeah, as you said before that, come from games for about 10 years over there in San Francisco, and that's what really Refereum is all about, is we help influencers basically directly connect with game developers. So usually right now, marketing budgets are going to Google and Facebook, and that's probably 99% of all those profits. So what does that world look like when we can redistribute some of those marketing budgets directly to individuals, directly to influencers, directly to those people all around the world, whether that's across borders, playing video games, engaging with that stuff. Yeah.
Good. Sarah-Diane, what makes Sandblock different?
So at Sandblock, we are community makers, and we have currently 2 products. The first one is a fintech product because we are changing liabilities that are engaging customers, so loyalty points, vouchers, etc., into asset, so digital asset, crypto asset that brand can use and give to their customers to really engage them, because instead of having a value that you are not the owner, no, you have kind of the money of a brand, and this help us to engage communities around brands. And we also developed a mobile application that is on the stores now. It was not planned. We did that at first to prove that we could do a good tech product, and we use that to engage our community members into our own ICO, so really the crypto space. I've been in this space for several years now, but we started this company with really no budget, so we have nothing to spend on marketing, and it was in the typical bull market where everything started to be expensive. Even if we started to prepare this ICO like at the beginning of 2017, so we should maybe better have done our ICO directly without doing any product, but we took the time. And yes, I think talking about communities and engagement, it's something that is crucial in this space, because there are a lot of ideas about the numbers you need to get on your channels and the way people interact. And actually, when you look back of the early communities, you can find the essential. And I think now this beer market that we are currently in let also see the basics of the community metrics.
I mean, it's very true that there is no traction without good community engagement. Yeah. Whatever the project is, actually building that engagement. People often look and say, "Oh, yeah, I've got this many people on Telegram, therefore it's." But it's actually having that that power behind you to get involved with the project and to give it wings, because none of these business models can survive without the support of the users.
Oh, and this is common assumption that the primary community of a blockchain project is composed of investors speculating on tokens more than future users. Do you think that a blockchain project unite as a single community or aggregate diverse communities?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So there's 2 things that you covered there, is like, what is that speculator ratio or life? And I think really we have a lot of conversations in the space about how to write your smart contracts and a lot of technical conversations, but we don't have a lot of conversations in the industry about how can you best really angle your community to be those people that are going to go with you on this journey, right? Who aren't just here to flip your coin or make a quick buck or anything like that. How do you better weed that out? How do you really kind of foster that? And so the question about, is there multiple different types and diversity? I think there's all different types of people in the industry, and particularly people who want to participate in that community. So, for instance, you'll have builders, you'll have speculators, you'll have people who just want to be all-stars. In terms of a demographic, I think that, unfortunately, we're all still hoping for more diversity in the space, but right now it's kind of more early 30s, younger 20s, white dudes, basically. And so we can kind of see that with some of the issues as well. We are, of course, talking about games, and we're here at games and blockchain. I think there's a huge Venn diagram of gamers, very technical savvy consumers, consumers who are standing by, willing to adopt blockchain, and the general blockchain audience. In fact, I think that Venn diagram is almost a circle, which gives hopefully everybody in the room a huge leg up when it comes to developing games and blockchain projects, because you do have those technical savvy consumers, you have those people standing by. I think in terms of where communities linger and where they stay, it is super important to keep them in, ironically, a centralized place, keep them in kind of one avenue. We've probably made a few mistakes. We had a Discord and a Telegram, and then you have Twitter and Reddit, and all of those are super important. But if you can, if there's any projects out there, is really kind of focus that foundation into keeping them in one place. So avoid diversity in terms of medians and increase diversity both in terms of types of people, in terms of who's in your community, and in terms of the roles they're trying to fulfill.
I would say yes. Going into one channel, yes, it's important to have all the others. But going into one channel in a lot of depth and looking at the management of the community in there, and it gives you a much better feel for measuring the engagement if they're all in one place, because then you're comparing apples and apples. You can see exactly how people. You can see the behaviour of the people in the community without any variable as to how they might interact on a different medium. So if everybody is on Telegram, at least you can measure how they're interacting, because that's really important. I mean, there's a huge amount of research around community behaviour, community management that's been done by the Community Roundtable in the US over the last decade, and it's a recurring theme that however big your community looks in terms of the numbers you've racked up on Telegram or the followers you've racked up on Twitter or the people on so on, you probably only get around 30% of those people engaging in any meaningful way, and maybe only the top 5 to 10% being true collaborators within that community.
Yeah, if that, yeah.
If that, yeah.
Sarah-Diane?
Yeah, at the same time, I think it's kind of difficult because you are building a technology that is used globally, that has no barriers, and people that you are trying to getting involved, they use different channels. For example, in China, it's WeChat. In Korea, we had to build a Kakao Talk channel because people, they don't go to Telegram naturally. This is sometimes difficult because I completely agree when you want to have metrics and measure the engagement. Those different telegrams and different views are really hard to manage, and this is exactly the reason why we built this mobile application to measure that. And we did that by making some kind of games between the players, what we call not user but players of our system. So knowledge game about what is maybe the basic, the blockchain, what is an ICO, and then what our project is about. We are like a marketing project. So in this community, sometimes it's not a project that is naturally exciting for them. So we try to explain what we are doing using gamification, and using this app. It was for us like a concrete tool to aggregate this community and make them interact also one to each other, even if you have all those barriers that you have to break if you want to make a true core community.
How do you reach influential members of the community?
Actually, we did two kind of things. The first one is that we made a lot of roadshows, conferences during 1 year. And each time we found like influential members, we gave them some business cards with some QR code in it. And when we launched our app, every member could scan the business cards they received. And we also use a common practice that is airdrops and bounties. But instead of so airdrops, it's a common practice in ICO. You have an amount of token that you give for free. It's really dangerous to do kind of those practices, and everybody is is doing that. It's a good way to spread the information. And so what we did, instead of the giving token, we gave stakes. And this is why our product is it's called staking, because stakes, they are unlimited. So you can grab stakes, you play a game, you grab stakes, you share an information on LinkedIn that have a lot of influence, you win stakes, you play a little game that we developed and you are the first one in the game, you win stakes. And at the end, the people who stakes represent the level of engagement, and the tokens are distributed directly from that. So we fixed the amount of token for 1 year. So it's, when you are doing a lot of different communication action, it's hard to fix, but we fix it and we just use stakes. And members were all in competition. And what is really funny is that our best influential members, they became like community members and so on. We never like paid them or asked them to do it. We had people that created a Korean special channel, a Turkish special channel, and so on. And when we saw that, we had like a big relief, because we saw that the seed we planted like a year ago started to grow. And I think it's an industry when you have this feeling that there is a community behind you, supporting and liking you. I mean, you have this feeling that you are really on the good base.
Yeah, I think with Sarah, just there was two things that really stuck out on me. Is one is that layer of gamification. Hello? One is that layer of gamification. I'm seeing a lot of successful projects in the industry these days engage, whether they're games or not, use all those best practices of gamification, ours included. We had, similar to stakes, we used a point system. And in fact, we've actually developed some of those tools. We were using them for games, and now actually we've found that other token projects are now using some of our tools that take some of those best practices. Like Sarah was talking about, it's really dangerous to just give away straight crypto. We couldn't do it either. I don't know a lot of projects that have done that successfully, because if you, let's say, jump into a Telegram group or say hi on Twitter or retweet something and you're just getting tokens directly, hacks, abuses, things could go wrong. So to have what we like to refer to in some of our literature and blogs is like a layer 2 incentivization system. That way it uses just a database, which is fine in this case because again it's for those rewards. And in terms of airdrops and all these different types of things, we're seeing the industry move away from just plain blanket airdrops and more into, again, we just like to come up with silly names, but like earn drops, right? Where you earn the amount of tokens that you get. That's a very small difference, but it's huge in terms of what it basically incentivizes your community to do. Now, your top mod members, your top participants are getting more tokens for their participation. And really the only way to do that is with a kind of a layer on top of your blockchain economy and your token economy that basically allows that. So that's a huge aspect of what we're seeing these days is gamification is that second layer 2. Really you need those things to do a token sale these days.
Yeah, that's an excellent example on both sides of the strategy that will actually help you manage the community and grow the community. The people who are just going, build it and they will come, are the ones that are not going to succeed.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the key is awareness, basically. So how to create it?
Always, yeah, of course.
It's awareness and your own having a really clear understanding of how that awareness builds and what you want people to be aware of. So knowing what your community is. I mean, I know you touched on what are the blockchain communities, and we have that really clear intersection here of the people who are building the games are also using the games. So you have an intersection of developers and users. But in many in blockchain projects outside of gaming, you don't have that intersection necessarily. There's a small intersection of developers and users. So there's a much more tricky management game. And I'd suggest there's actually other communities as well. I mean, there is the legal and advisory communities that are involved as well. There's a lot building up around that aspect that still has an intersection with all of the other communities that are going on. It's almost as if we need some sort of decentralized network to manage them all.
It is a way to create awareness to support community needs? I guess so, but it's easier to say than to do. So how do you manage to get what the community needs and to support it properly?
I think it's a challenge that every project is facing. And the thing is that there is an existing community. I think the blockchain community is composed by diverse communities, but there is different kind of spirit in it. And for example, the product that the application we developed, it's used, as you say, by other today ICO, because you have this basis of people. They have different kind of interests, but they are all interested in blockchain and crypto. And so now the community, we have more than 50,000 people. So it's kind of small if you compare that to classic consumer applications. But there are really people engaged and with really great knowledge about this topic. So I think those kind of tools where the community is there, you need digital and also physical, like in big conferences, when you have people of the core blockchain community there, you can spread awareness in different groups and then try to give a movement of them to start to talking about the project, to spread the interest that they have themselves. And I think it's an industry where the word of mouth is really important, because every project I knew from 4 years now, I discovered that them through the other person I was seeing on chatting with.
Yeah, it's extra hyper-targeted. So brand awareness is always important, but really when you're doing a token sale or when you're building that community, there are major influencers, both in terms of monetary and in terms of builders, that you can get that now you have to be infiltrating into, Facebook groups or very specific hyper-targeted ads and engagements. And I think one of the topics that keep coming up is, how do you prepare for that? You can deliver with the community once, but once you do that, are you prepared for whatever happens next? I can tell you that, when we did our token sale, honestly, we were totally underprepared for what it takes as a small startup to manage a community of 100,000 emails 1 week. How do you reply to that? It's easy to say, support your community. It's much harder to say, do you ramp up a team in-house, outside, to respond to those email inbound? What happens, when your Telegram, which is a pretty unmoderated technology, basically, that has a lot of basically issues in terms of privacy and in terms of posting and spam that you wouldn't get from other maybe more Western platforms. We had to basically create, in the middle of our token sale, a Telegram bot that would go through and delete messages and links. You mentioned there's a lot of research in this, but there's not a lot of tools, especially when you get to that scale. There's not a lot of tools. Like, for instance, there's laws. People come in and post child porn in your Telegram group and into your community. How do you deal with that? We weren't prepared. It turns out that you have to submit that to the FBI and everywhere in between in the States. So there's a lot of small things that it comes to building that engaging community that's really easy. And I think a lot of people see on the surface of like, oh, you get the numbers up and you write a lot of emails and stuff, but there's a lot of scaling problems that come from building a community, both legally, like everything in blockchain, we have to get 3 accountants to look at it instead of just 1, 4 lawyers to look at it instead of just 1. It's the same thing with community. A lot of people underestimate what that takes to scale, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, for 4 years, I was a co-founder and grew to exit a community software business. And we built community software from scratch. It was a private network that clients tended to take to sit outside their corporate networks, because there's a lot of good corporate networks. I mean, there's all the higher logics and so on out there that are running multinationals and things. So we developed these community tools, and we had to go really deep into the legal side of things, the user agreements, and we have a big moderating hammer, and you will be out of here if you do anything that you're not supposed to. And it's a real challenge to manage a community effectively. And I think that's yet another thing that people are simply not aware of, because you've got several things going on here in terms of community management. You've got what you want people to do to begin with in terms of your token sale. So you have one set of behavior that you want to incentivize, and then you have another set of behavior that you want to incentivize to retain those people to use the thing that you have built, rather than just going off and trading the tokens. So keeping them within your ecosystem. And then you have all of the moderation aspect of it, and understanding as you say, the legals, the user agreements, the privacy aspect, and it's an absolute minefield. There are a lot of tools out there, but they're all sitting in enterprise applications, but it's well worth going and having a look at them.
In your projects, in your respective projects, how did you and how do you provide the community with the values they deserve and the value they wish? I think this is a major point to crack, to build a community. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the whole build it and they will come. No, they won't. They need a reason to be there.
Yeah, I think also you have to be really clear up front on the pillars that you want out of your community. You mentioned there are a lot of different factors and goals, what you want out of the community, and that differs from project to project and person to person, and I am not here to judge or offer advice on that, but I think that if you don't start your community with pillars that you think are important, like inclusion, like, hey, no trash talking or no flipping, whatever that is, it will spiral out beyond your control. And I see a lot of projects that I think are unfortunate. They're just trying to grab that money or whatever it is, and they don't really see that longer term vision of what are you actually trying to create, especially after, we're all familiar with, Gamergate, everything in between. It's so important that you lay that groundwork now, especially because crypto and the internet and everything in between is kind of, you have similar issues on that front. So you have to be really upfront, really clear with full documented policies, willing to respond to those emails of, hey, did you break that rule or did you not? You have to have a team for all that stuff.
Do you have a team handling that? Sarah-Diane?
Yeah, sure. And at the same time, I think tools like Telegram, they are not there to be controlled. And we are also in the decentralization. The decentralization of the process can be also made by the community. And it's true that in terms of legal aspects, and sometimes you are a little bit scared about all these crowded things that you have to manage. And we decided then, as we were a really small team, not to manage that. So actually, most of our Telegram groups have been created by the members of the community themselves. They asked us, and we said, yes, do it if you want. And so we don't moderate them, because we have no idea of what they are talking about on those groups. And
you're not involved at all?
No, we look sometimes, but we are not admin of those groups at all. And I think also it's good to let people express. It is clear that it's not our groups. It's clear for the community. But it's nice also to let people express themselves in those groups. And when we want to provide tools when we have control, this is exactly the reason why we developed this app. Also, some groups are really great to do that, like Facebook. It's tools that are perfect. We were in a time, at the time we wanted to use the tool, we were banned for that, because you cannot make publicity advertisement for ICOs. So after building the community in those channels, we were forbidden to use them. So yeah, it's at the same time a scaring process, and also an exciting one. So you have to deal with all the tools that you can get, and also let some of them used directly by the people, and not controlled by yourself, I think.
That's one of the powers of a well-managed community, actually. With the work that we did with Ambix, we found people who were swamped by the number of emails they were getting, and they were not able to respond to the people that were in their community. And so by implementing a layer of software, a community hub, if you like, people were able to move away from the hub and spoke communication and actually start asking questions within the community, and it took a huge administrative load off the top. So if you are managing it well and you've got that collaboration and creative aspect of an active community, you win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you have the time and forethought to make sure to set up those systems beforehand, for sure, always worth it. And I think one thing that keeps coming back is tools. You mentioned there's a lot of good enterprise tools, and that's absolutely true. I think some words of warning, though, is like Sarah was talking about, a lot of tools just don't allow you to use them, right? So now you're entering, as a token founder or a project, you're entering into this world where you have a lot of assumptions. I can go get a bank account, or I can go send a mailing list. But when we had in the middle of our token sale, MailChimp just shut down our list, right? And we thought that we lost our entire list for this, for our business, for everything, of all that sunk cost. And it's because there was some probably trigger in there or something where they saw, they mentioned token, right? Or they're doing something like that, even though we would never use one of the banned words, as we like to say in the industry. You just can't assume that all those traditional tools are going to be available for you. So be prepared to either build or even do further research on kind of making sacrifices on those tools, because you really can't rely, again, on kind of like those centralized one authority figure of saying, nope, I don't like you, or I don't like this, and then you're toast.
Yeah, I will say though, building tools, using all the enterprise tools that are out there, fantastic, but you've got to get people to come to that place first. So there is a real place for using the third-party things like Facebook, and being really clear about what you put on there and what you don't, but driving people from there to the place where you can really discuss the things you want to discuss without fouling anybody else's user agreements.
Okay, guys, it was really interesting. It was my pleasure to moderate this panel, and maybe we will have some questions from the audience.
Stolen all your microphones.
Thanks. What's your take on like how do you think we should tell the community our marketing plan and the whole strategy? How do you like show out to everyone? Because as you know, we always get this question when Moon, and we have to explain what we're doing on the marketing aspect of our projects.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And yeah, we're all super familiar with Win Moon, Win Binance, a lot of really frustrating questions. I think that one of the lessons we learned, and again, our community is everything to us. It is where we start, where we end. Shout out to all those folks. But I think one thing that we learned was it's much better to wait until you are 100% positive that that is your plan and that is your action item. That I think a lot of corporate, as a startup, sometimes you forget those lessons. You realize, oh, that's right. That's why corporations have those things sometimes where they go, no, do not sign off on this, because the amount of basically whiplash, we like to say, with your community on if you have a plan that you absolutely intend on delivering, that you've already paid for, and then MailChimp shuts you down, or that doesn't work out, or ETH goes to $50 tomorrow, right? Like, and you slowly kind of lose trust with your community if you do that. So we've personally found that just really making sure that you're telling them, in advance, you're telling them when you can, but only after you're 100% confident that that'll be happening. Because the reality is, people who are asking you when Moon, when Binance, those people will never be satisfied with whatever you're about to say. So don't let the people down who are really backing you, who are really excited for your project, by exposing a plan that's maybe a little bit too early, or that alternatively is just about to be improved upon as well. That's a lot of the other aspects. Is there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily understand what it's like to run a business, and that's okay. We still love them, but it's also, there's like an extreme lack of empathy when something has to change. So in terms of your question of when do you tell them, absolutely when you're 100% sure, and maybe just a little bit in advance, right? Always give them a tip. It's important to keep that community, the insiders club. They should know what's about to come out, but make sure that stuff is about to come out.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. Great question. I wish I was asking that question a year ago.
I was wondering about, obviously, getting the community started and all that kind of stuff is great, but obviously there's going to be some point where hopefully you've succeeded, etc., and you're going to translate that community into your working business. How much overlap is there between the community you build in getting your IC off the ground and the ones who are actually going to stay with you and keep that business running and getting involved with how that arrangement works? Because my suspicion is you're dealing with almost essentially a completely different audience. Is that fair?
That's a great question. I think it really depends. Well, it certainly depends on project to project, of course. I can talk about our experience, but really how we like to measure that are things like unsubscribe on your mailing list. Let's say after you complete your token sale or whatever it is, what's the unsubscribe rate? What are the people who just wanted to get in real quick and get rich or whatever it is? How can you better measure that stuff? In terms of the actual number, gosh, I don't know. I'd love to probably drill into some of that data on there. But of course, you see a very significant drop, right? That's just kind of the reality of the space. But when you foster that community, at least from our perspective, for our whitelist and for our token sale itself, is we actually made people jump through a lot of hoops talking about what kind of games do you like to play? Why are you interested in Refereum? It wasn't just a one-click sign up. And we're seeing that a lot now. Richard Ma, CEO over at QuantStamp, did their token sale before us, and he coined this great phrase called proof of caring. That was this classic thing of how do you get people to show that they love the project, right? And people, Richard said that people named their dogs Quant and Stamp, right? These are totally off the wall, really hard to measure aspects, but those are the hardcore people in there. And so we try to do that a little bit more when we did Refereum, a little bit more at scale, so that they spent weeks and weeks and weeks reviewing Google Docs of, well, is your dog really named Quant and Stamp and stuff, but how do you do that more at scale? And we actually have, if you're interested, we have a lot of tools now that we've developed that other blockchain companies are using to do exactly that, right? To measure that, to make sure that when you're in a token sale, you only see your ETH number, and that's fine, and that's tunnel vision. But I promise that there very much is a world post-token sale, despite how far away that is. And we really try to encourage people, hey, that life is coming to you very quickly. How can you prepare for that? And you nailed it in terms of what is that ratio. So in terms of the numbers, who knows? It's certainly lower, but you can do things to build that up steadily in a sustainable way to get ready for your actual project.
Yeah, I think the numbers would be really interesting. It would be kind of nice to start collating some data on that. But just if a community isn't one-way traffic, that's probably the key to it. If you're managing a proper community, you are going to try and engage people in the dream that you have of what the business model is going to be, what the product is going to be. And if you can engage people right at the start, then you've got a much better chance of retaining them and growing that community once the thing starts to get off the ground.
And also, we let people choose among the rewards we gave them, like the stakes. We proposed them to lock them for a certain period of time. And in terms of number, what we noticed that the people who prefer to lock their token for a period of maybe 6 months to 1 year was more than 60% So it was like huge, and we didn't expect such an involvement. And the thing is that it's a game. It's a game with your community. I mean, when they feel that you are doing things for them, and that they will continue to interact with you also, because you as you said, there's a lot of projects who stop to talking to their community the same way than before the ICO. So I think it's a bi-directional relation, and a good community, of course, is a community that remains engaged after and during the whole life of the project, maybe through multiple generations of of people.
Yeah, that's when you need them the most, really, is when you want to increase utility, when you want to open up into new markets, really the easiest way, the only way right now, just because we're so early in the space, it is 1992, right? And we're all talking about the internet, and we're also trying to figure it out. But when you open up into exchanges, it's very common to vote, right? Well, 8 months ago, that wasn't the case. You just pay an absurd amount of money. But now it's voting, it's everything in between. That's when you need that community the most.
All right. Thank you so much, Dylan, Sarah-Diane, and Kay. Thank you so much for being our panelists today. And thank you very much, Anne, for organizing this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.